Welcome, everyone. It's so wonderful to see each of you here today. As you know, we are unable to actually see you, but we can see each of your names. So rest assured, we do know that you're here. And as always, we appreciate your support and we look forward to your participation. I can see that a few of you are still joining us, so just a few quick notes as you get settled. A reminder that you'll be able to freely communicate with us throughout the event by using the chat box. This is how you'll be able to submit questions directly to me and to our panelists today, and we really encourage you to do so. And if you have any issues throughout the event, just send a chat message directly to me at any point and I'll help you out. By the way, many of you likely already know me, but if not, my name is Jennifer Hall, and I serve as the Director of Development for the University of Toledo Foundation, where I have the honor of working very closely with the College of Engineering. So it looks like we're going to have a great turnout today. The innovation of the College of Engineering has an appeal across the university, and we are looking forward to sharing the details with you. If you've joined us for any of the previous town hall events, you'll notice that the format will be a bit different today. Scott Molitor will be our moderator, and he'll be joined by special guests, Jason Toth, Linda Beal, Sean Bright, and Paul Hotmer. So let's get things started and jump right in by turning things over to Professor and Senior Associate Dean for Academic Affairs, Scott Molitor.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. I really appreciate it. And if anybody out there is looking for Mike, he's just a member of the audience today, so you won't be hearing from him. I've been really looking forward to this. I really appreciate Mike giving me the opportunity to talk about it. It's a subject that's really near and dear to my heart. I've been working on this for a while, and I also get to do this with a number of people I really enjoy working with. So we have Linda Beal, who's a distinguished university lecturer emerita. Linda, thank you and welcome. We have Jason Toth, who is the Senior Associate Vice President for Administration and Facilities, Construction, and Supply Chain. We have Sean Bright, who's a principal at Champlin Architecture. And then I've got a bonus fourth guest, Paul Hotmer, who is retired from Owens-Illinois, spent much, if not all of his career at the tech center we're going to be talking about. And he's also an alumnus and a great friend of the College of Engineering. And thanks to the audience for jumping on, and as Jennifer mentioned, if you have any questions, feel free to pass them along and we will try to answer them. Okay, so I am going to share my screen and we're going to get going. So here is a view of our campus at night, and if we can just go ahead, here is another view. This is another view of our campus, and what we're looking at here is the engineering campus, and hopefully you can see my red pointer there. And I am actually up here in Nitschke Hall on the 5th floor, and we're going to be talking about this facility in white. This is the North Engineering High Bay that is currently being renovated. And around it is our North Engineering building, where we have on the west wing, we have a number of research and teaching labs. We have on the east wing our engineering technology offices and labs, as well as a number of research labs on that area. We have Palmer Hall. We'll be talking a little bit about Palmer Hall. And then to the south of Nitschke Hall, we have Nitschke Auditorium. This is the Nitschke Technology Commercialization Complex. And then down here at the very bottom, in the bottom right corner, is the R1 building. And this didn't always look like this. So here's a similar perspective from, I was guessing, from about the 1970s. If you blow up and try to look at those cars, that's what it looks like. And again, here is the high bay. Here is Palmer Hall. And notice we don't have a Nitschke Hall, auditorium, commercialization complex, or R1 building. Linda and Paul, what are some of the other things I'm seeing in this picture? Oh, Linda, are you?
Well, I can certainly speak to that. The closure plant is in the front, in the fore of that image, as well as the home of Toledo Pickling across Westwood. The closure plant was retrofitted for Kimball Glass after the buyout of Kimball Glass out of New Jersey from OI. Kimball Glass was the developers of borosilicate glass, which
Yep.
was used for scientific measurements, that kind of thing. Owens-Illinois certainly considered themselves to be a very strong research company at that time, and so this was of some great interest to
Yep.
them as well.
Yep. And then you mentioned here, this is where the pickling plant was. This is what we used to call our Westwood Annex that was demolished a few years back. And it used to house our Polymer Institute as well as our mail services. Um, and Linda, you mentioned the borosilicate glass. I heard a story about something called Cervet glass it was a low expansion glass that they made mirrors for telescopes. And there was a story about a 4-meter telescope in the Canary Island where they lost the blank to the mirror, and it was ended up being found buried somewhere on, on our property. And I don't know why or how it got there, but they managed to find the mirror and send it out to the Canary Islands. And then Paul, you mentioned this facility with a sawtooth roof to the north. Could you tell me a little bit more about that facility?
Well, it was, oh, I acquired that property and they used it as a storage facility. And it was, I remember it was Hillfinger plating. And
Okay.
they had all types of acid baths and so on involved in plating work. And it eventually became a toxic site. And after the buildings were torn down, they covered the entire area with whatever type of material they used to seal it. And of course, later, the new housing units were built over that area.
Oh, interesting. So things have changed a bit since back in the day. And I just want to give you a
We
little
had a
more.
question, is that where the apartments are right now?
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yes, the Old Town Apartments. And I lost my chat box, Jen. So if you could pass those along, I'd appreciate it. Yeah, right here where Paul mentioned the Hillfinger plating complex is now the Old Town Apartments. And then if I just move forward here, another overhead view. This is probably from the 1950s because you'll notice the building that we call Palmer Hall is not here. We still have the high bay and the tech center, as well as the Hillfinger plating complex, the pickling plant, the closure plant. And then we had some additional facilities across Dorr Street. So what you're seeing is this is Dorr Street running east-west. So north is to the left on this figure. And this again would be where now the Old Town apartment complexes are. And then this is where the Edge apartment complexes now across Dorr Street from us. Okay. So I wanted to talk to Linda a little bit about her experience, and in particular, your father's experience. So your father worked on this complex for a number of years. Could you tell us a little bit about what he did?
He did. So we were speaking about Kimball Glass earlier. My father worked both for the Illinois Glass Company in Alton and then joined Kimball Glass in New Jersey, and through the buyout moved to Toledo. In truth, my entire family is involved with the glass industry, and people like me are termed as living in glass houses because everyone is associated with glass. So my father was actually trained as a chemist, but joined OI and then moved through the managerial ranks. And his office was indeed at the tech center. As I recall, it was actually in the East Wing, where engineering
Okay.
technology is now, but I was very young and I may not have remembered that quite as clearly as I could have.
Okay. And so these directories, the one on the left is from 1963 and the one on the right is from 1981. And when did he retire from OI?
I graduated from college in the spring of 1982, and my father retired exactly a week later, telling me that I was now off the payroll.
which is perfect because he was under wage and salary administration.
He was actually very good at telling people that they were no longer under payroll, which can be a little awkward at some time. But yeah, so.
And I do want to mention to everybody out there who's wondering why I have these big black squares here. Um, in the day, well, actually, Linda, you tell the story.
So it was a point of pride among Owens-Illinois employees that everyone had their home telephone numbers published in what was called a telephone book, which many of you may be acquainted with. And so everybody had their home phone numbers published. You could pick up the phone and call, including J.P. Levis. You could actually pick up the phone and call the CEO. Of course, he did have two lines, so yeah. But that was very much the culture.
Yep. So I didn't want to, as a faculty member, we're always told, about privacy laws and things like that. So I didn't want to reveal anybody home phone number or address. And actually, I just noticed a chat from Tom Brady, who mentioned that old Hillfinger complex was where they developed the PET bottle technology in the 1970s. So Tom, of course, has experience in that facility as well. Okay. And then we talked a little bit, so we're not sure if your father worked in this building or in the what we now call the North Engineering, or what used to be the Tech Center. I have memories of this building when I first started, so there have been a number of renovations over the years, and one of the things I remember is on the third floor, these classrooms it was just a big open space that they had to put up temporary partitions like office cubicles. And I believe it was Connie Shaw, one of my first lectures I was giving. She came into my class to tell me to keep it down because her students couldn't hear her lecturing over me lecturing to my students. So about a year later, they put in the temporary, or they replaced the temporary partitions with the permanent walls, and we didn't have that problem after then. So, and Linda, you were talking about a story of whether you thought that either the Tech Center or the Palmer building had an open floor plan that you could see right through it at night.
Well, they both had open plans, but the admin building, which is now Palmer, had kind of cubicles in it. It only came about because my capstone students at UT had an idea to retrofit Palmer, and so I had this great idea with them that we would essentially make Palmer see-through, so that you could see through it, and then Nitschke could be essentially viewed from Douglas. And I told them the story about we would drive by, Westwood at night with my dad, and we could see through Palmer. And I was telling my aunt the story, and she said, no, she said, you mean the tech center, you mean the drafting rooms, because the
Okay.
drafting rooms were open to both the east and the western light, and so you got daylight all day long into those. So it
Got it.
was still a great capstone project, but I was a little off base.
And I just got a correction from Tom Brady. So it wasn't the Hillfinger complex. It was that complex south of Dorr Street where they developed the PET bottle technology. Thanks, Tom. I appreciate the correction there. All right. Well, when I was looking through the directories, I also found this name. And by the way, shout out to the Tamara Jones, the librarian at the Kennedy Center at the Carlson Library, for helping me find all this material. So this is a name we might recognize here in the OI directory, and his name seems to pop up through North Engineering periodically. So Paul, you said you joined Owens-Illinois a few months before the Tech Center opened. Is that correct?
Yes, 1955, after graduating UT with a mechanical engineering degree. I
Excellent.
went basically across the street from the college, across Westwood, and started working at OI within about 2 weeks after graduation.
And just so I can give you guys a little context here, and I hope you can see this. I tried to up the contrast. So this is a site plan from the early 1950s. And what it shows is the high bay, or at least a portion of the high bay, is called the existing pilot plant. So this must have already been on the site. And then they were going to build the new tech center around it. And also it shows the existing closure plant. So they're going to add some parking lots. Now this is where Palmer Hall stands. So Palmer Hall must have been added later. And then what Tom was talking about, the PET development facility, was over here on the far right across Door Street. And then Linda, the Kimball factory would have been here with this existing closure plant. And then the Hullfinger complex would have been over here. And then this was the Pickling / Westwood annex. And here it's called the Anstead Company. And I couldn't find any information on it. I didn't know what happened here. So this again would have been in the early 1950s. And this just shows the construction of the tech center around the high bay. So we are looking from Westwood Avenue towards the northeast. And here's the existing pilot plant / high bay. You can see it peeking out over there. And then the Sawtooth building to the far left would have been that Hellfinger complex. And so you can see the construction of North Engineering in the early 1950s around that. And then here is a picture of the dedication. And thanks to Paul, Paul has actually a souvenir. So if you didn't believe Paul worked on the Tech Center site from a couple months before it opened, here's the evidence that he did. So thank you, Paul, for providing me this little artifact. You can see the date of the dedication. And I've got 5 gentlemen in here. I'm going to hold off introducing the one in the middle. But from left to right, we have Hugh Laughlin, who was the executive vice president at the time, Carl McGowan, who was the CEO, a name you guys are familiar with, J. Preston Levis, chairman of the board, and also the namesake for Lemus Commons. And then we have Oscar Birch, who, according to Paul, you said he was an executive vice president for technology at the time. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yep. This gentleman in the middle is a man by the name of George Granger Brown, or for my friends who spent some time in Ann Arbor and went to that school up north, also known as G.G. Brown. And one of the buildings on the north campus of the University of Michigan is the G.G. Brown building. I spent a number of long days and long nights working in the G.G. Brown building on my homework and computer project assignments. And I never knew who G.G. Brown was until I was doing research for this town hall. So there's a shout out to anybody who has an affiliation with the University of Michigan. And he came to the dedication that day to give a talk on the future of industrial research. So, Paul, this may look familiar to you. And
Yes.
I am looking at this, and what I notice is Palmer Hall is missing. So this photo was taken before the what we call Palmer Hall complex was built. And it looks a little different then. You spent a fair bit of time in this building. Could you tell me, just relative to looking at this building, again, we're looking from Westwood, where would you have worked? Where would your offices, or, things like that?
Well, that's a complex question because I had at least probably 8 or 10 different jobs and worked in about every corner of the front
Okay.
engineering, back pilot plant for several years, and then finally with the Edison System Center back in what we called the East Addition, clear at the
Oh,
rear.
way over here off to the right. Yep.
Yeah, this
Okay.
originally was the main entrance to the technical center, where the double doors are, and then a walkway here, and then back to the south to the right would have been just parking areas. But this was Westwood here, the dark paving area.
Yep. Yep. This is Westwood going north-south. Yep.
Right, that would be Westwood.
Yep.
And so
Okay.
that's what it looked like when I started in 1955.
Yep. And could you tell us a little bit about what's going on in here? So this is actually a view of the inside of our high bay and would have
Yeah,
been the pilot plant at the time.
Right, it was a high bay area now, referred to it as high bay, but it was called the pilot plant during the OI time there. And to the upper left would be where all the main pipes are showing there. That would be the glass furnace. And then there's the angular construction areas. I think there's three fanning out from there. Those are called forehars. They're refining the glass another stage, where to the outside end of those would be the feeder, where the glass would be formed into what we call gobs into the particular machine station below it, glass forming machine. They usually had one of each of the main types of forming machines in at the tech center and operating. One was called the individual section, or IS, and we never had what was called the Owens machine. Was a big rotary
Oh,
machine.
right.
That's more something used at Libby. We never had that here. Anyway, all the machine operations were conducted, and they made sample glasses. I think I showed you one,
Yes.
a little boot that they
Yeah, you
did
showed me the
sampling
boot.
on.
I'm sorry I
Yeah.
didn't include that, but yeah, it was very intricate. It was like a boot-shaped flask, correct?
Yes, it was a boot, fancy looking, and it was probably contained perfume or some kind of cologne or something.
Right.
Now the area down below, just in the front, that would be the annealing layer. Once the glass was completed into bottles or other shapes, then it was put in the annealing layer,
Okay.
the lower, the center bottom, and of course that traveled out until it come out the other end, where it would be selected and packed.
Yep. And this little stairway, there's this little circular stairway. I believe Sean and Jason is now gone with the renovation, but would lead into a basement area. And Paul, you said that this is where they disposed of glass,
Uh,
or
The glass coming, many of the jobs ran glass or wasn't saved. It would be just dumped down a chute and then go down into the basement area. And where the chutes ended, they had hoppers similar to like they have at oh, the metal uh, companies over there across Door Street.
oh,
They
okay.
have like dumpsters, and they would collect the glass, and of course that would be running with water to cool it. Then eventually that was recycled into, well, ground up into cullet, which is a recycled glass.
Yep. So we're looking from the southeast corner of the high bay towards the northwest. And so these would be the windows on the north side of the high bay, which is now overlooking. You would, on the other side of these would be our parking lot and the Old Town Apartments. And then there's also another side. So this is just the eastern half of the high bay. And we had this mezzanine area. In fact, I can flip forward to show you, this is what it looked like right before we started the renovation. So here's our wind tunnel from our mechanical engineering department. And then you can see the mezzanine. And then over on the other side would be the west side of the high bay, the windows on the north. So it's a very similar perspective. We had one of the questions was, what's the disposition of the wind tunnel? And it's still a work in progress. We believe we've identified a location, but we're going to have to identify some funds to put it back together, because it's going to have to go outside. It's no longer, we don't have any space inside for the wind tunnel. So we're going to be looking for a place or a way to reconstruct it outside behind our our Nitschke Hall building. So anyways, again, I'm going to turn to Jason. Jason, so this is what North Engineering looked like before the renovation, and or I should say, this is what it looked like when Owens-Illinois had it as its tech center right after they opened it up. And of course, this is what it looked like more recently. And you can see that the exterior has been redone. And I believe, we weren't sure about this, but I believe the exterior was redone in the mid-90s along with the construction of Nitschke Hall, which you also see here. And we've also had some other renovation that have been ongoing. So like I said, we have a number of research and teaching labs on this side of the building, which would be the west end. And then we relocated engineering technology from Scott Park here about 15 years ago to the east wing of North Engineering. And Linda, you'd mentioned you thought your father's office at one time had been in this side of the tech center complex.
Yes, I believe, and possibly Paul can correct me on this, but the East Wing was um, developed for kind of administrative overflow after they sort of outgrew the administration building, which is now Palmer, and so that entire East Wing was administration
Okay.
offices.
Yep. And again, here's the high bay and our sawtooth area. So all of this is what is being renovated. We're going to talk a little bit about what that's going to look like in a few minutes. And again, this doesn't include the changes we've made to the exterior with the exterior renovation, which we'll also talk about in a moment or two. So I got a chuckle with Jason before we hopped on that this is a picture of Palmer Hall, or what we call Palmer Hall, from the 1970s, it looks like. And this is a picture of Palmer Hall now. And Jason pointed out the big changes, namely the College of Engineering wrapper along the top. I was joking with Jason that I actually took this picture the other day. I just parked my Chevette out front and popped up an Owens-Illinois sign. So really not much has happened to the exterior, but there were some renovations from the time we inherited it from Owens-Illinois. So when I arrived as a faculty member in 2000, we had just finished up renovating the labs on the ground floor for bioengineering research and teaching labs. And then renovations occurred on the second and third floor for classroom space. And I believe that was finished in the early 2000s. As I mentioned, there were partitions on the third floor when I first started teaching here. And I have to show this picture. Shout out to Tammy if she's online. So this is a picture of Tammy Ferris, who's our bioengineering instructional laboratory coordinator. And she is standing over a trap door in the floor of a storage room adjacent to her office. And she didn't know what this was for. One day opened it up. And of course, you can see all the rust here. And it turns out there is water in this pit. And one of the things she noticed about the water in the pit was it was crystal clear. Nothing in it. Now, of course, you're looking at all this rust here. You would expect whatever water you would find in here would be pretty cloudy and messy. Crystal clear. She just does what any good scientist would do. She takes out a pH meter, measures the pH, and finds out that it's a pH of a 14. And so that's why the water is crystal clear. And apparently, and Jason, I think you mentioned that we have a few of these on the health science campus as well. Apparently, this is an acid neutralization pit for dumping excess acid. And no idea, Paul didn't know what Owens-Illinois would have done with that, but I think it's kind of funny back in the day, if you just had excess acid, you'd just open up a trap door and dump it down a pit, and that would be it. So I do want to say, if for any of my colleagues out there, if you've lost any bioengineering or chemical or civil engineering faculty over the years, wondered where they went, Tammy doesn't know. But she did ask me to ask if you know of any carnivorous fish that can survive at pH 14, let her know. So just saying, steer clear of Tammy's office. Okay, Jason, that's kind of the past to the present. So now I'd like to talk a little bit with you about where we're going.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. I appreciate it. What you're looking at here is the overall view of our 10-year master plan that was approved by the Board of Trustees back in 2017, where we're looking at the campus and what the next 10 years could look like in terms of investment and upgrading the campus to meet the needs of today's students and the future students. If you pivot forward, Scott, we rallied around 4 major points in the master plan, and you can see those on the screen. I won't take the time in reading each of those, but the efforts that we were trying to make significant change to the campus and upgrades to the campus. And today we want to focus on talking about the engineering campus. So if we pivot forward again, Scott, and we'll talk about where we look to make investment in the engineering campus, for our students, faculty, and staff. And you'll see depicted in this slide some few topics that are mentioned here: a new gateway to create a new arrival point to the campus, and you'll see a future slide of what that could potentially look at. You see highlighted in yellow the renovation and expansion in North Engineering, and that speaks to the high bay space that we're going to talk more in detail, and Champlin will do a nice job of showing some renderings of what we're doing there. And then you see a new building in a hot pink, which is a construction of a new multidisciplinary research facility. This is showing Palmer Hall being removed from the portfolio with the renovations that we're doing inside of the high bay to recreate that space inside of the high bay, which allows us to build a new facility which would be slid to the south, creating a green space out in front of Nitschke Hall to create similar expansion of the Centennial Mall on the engineering campus to create some outdoor green space for the campus to give it a different feel and a different appearance than what it has today, to support not only the activities that happen inside the classroom, but also some activities that occur outside.
And what you'll notice here is in white, we still, of course, are maintaining our existing portfolio with Nitschke Hall, Nitschke Auditorium, the Technology Commercialization Complex, and the R1 building, which houses our research and sponsored programs office, as well as the Wright Center for Photovoltaic Innovations in the R1 building as well, right, Jason?
Correct.
So we have the other solar panels out there. For those of you who've been on campus, Jason, you might want to talk a little bit about this building.
Yeah, we'll move back across the street a little bit there. Thanks, Scott. What you'll see there is that this is the former location of Carter East and West dormitory facility that's been removed strategically from the portfolio with the aspirational goal of bringing varsity softball and baseball back to the main campus with a new facility that would intersect with Stadium Drive across from the rec center and the Glass Bowl. Having a softball complex that would hit towards McComas Village, baseball that would hit towards the engineering campus, while still preserving 2 grass fields closest to Douglas for the band, for intramural activities, also for varsity athletics, along with our throwing events for track and field, which already occur. Because with the generosity of Mr. Hotner here on the call, we were able to put in the new soccer field with synthetic turf, which made us move our throwing events for track and field up here to this grass facility so that we wouldn't damage the new turf that was installed at Hotmer Field.
Yep. And Carter Hall, for those engineering either current students or alumni who are on the call, of course, may have fond or not so fond memory of Carter Hall, where a number of engineering students would live because of its proximity to the engineering campus. So Jason, you mentioned the gateway and the entryway from campus, and I think one of the issues with having engineering across Douglas is it always felt like it was separate from the main campus. And so I know you and your group are really working on correcting that with some of the renovations and changes we're going to be making. So could you talk a little bit about that and those plans?
Yeah, absolutely. So the picture that you're looking at is just the idea of giving a better branding and image of the engineering campus than what exists today. It's as Scott mentions, just by physical location, it's disconnected as it's divided by a 5-lane highway between the 2 sides of campus, which becomes an impediment for our students. So one of the things that we've talked about for several years is a overhead pedestrian walkway to be able to connect the campus. So I'm happy to say that in our state capital request for this year, we do have a funding request to be able to install that pedestrian bridge. It won't be in this close proximity. It will actually be slid further to the north near Savage Arena and interact with the bike trail that goes through the city, but gives the opportunity for students to be able to safely cross the road rather than illegally crossing mid-span down the hill and across.
Yeah.
So it'd be a great way to get our students, faculty, and staff back and forth and interact with the campus, but also work with the community for the bike program throughout the city.
And that's really going to in addition to having this gateway here, where is a common entrance for our students right now, we're really I'm going to have another gateway on the north side of North Engineering as well for those pedestrians coming over that bridge into what you're going to see soon as the renovated exterior of North Engineering. So I think that's also going to be a nice entryway for our students into the facility there. So now I get to turn it over to the star of the show. I think what a lot of people have come to hear from, and that is Sean Champlin, or Sean Bright from Champlin. I just called you Sean Champlin, so I think you own the company now.
There you go.
Sean, thanks for jumping on. First of all, tell us a little bit about Champlin and tell us what we're looking at here.
So Scott, thank you so very much. It's such a pleasure to be here with you all today. Champlin Architecture is an 85-person architecture and interiors firm with offices in Toledo, Cincinnati, Dayton, Lexington, and also Indianapolis. What you're seeing here is one of our most recent projects prior to being engaged to perform the renovation of the North Engineering facility is Parks Tower renovation, and what we ended up doing here was incorporating significant amounts of public student the interaction space, really reactivating that first floor, which is actually the second floor. A very interesting building and how it sits on the hill there. But enhancing the main entrance and really incorporating, working very closely with facilities, Jason and his staff, to incorporate brand and comfort to enhance the sense of community within the housing campus for UT.
Yeah. And for those of us who are familiar with Park Towers before the renovation, I just got to say, you guys did a fantastic job. It looks great. And the only problem is that after you get done with North Engineering, people are going to say, yeah, it's okay.
I think they'll probably say the Parks Tower, exactly. North Engineering is absolutely ramping some stuff up. And so what we're looking at here is a rendering that we completed at the end of the master planning phase, as we were moving into phase one. So this project has been broken down so far into 3 phases. We started off working very closely with you, and of course Dean Toole and others here. Linda Beal was very much a part of that. Jason and the staff, his staff as well, really going through a master planning phase that reimagined how this facility, could end up serving the College of Engineering long term. Understanding that the goal for the university was to ultimately take Palmer offline, and how we could implement that program and properly transition it into this high bay area, knowing that we have about 25,000 square feet of footprint and taking advantage of the wonderful volume, but also recognizing some of the roots in a slightly different way. You mentioned the glass manufacturing process, and so being the glass city, of course, we also wanted to pay a little bit of homage, to that. With the architectural skin, as we implemented a new curtain wall system, an aluminum panel system around the facility, and really introducing glass that is colored glass that takes advantage of silk screening, and we affectionately call it the dancing lantern, if you will. We've had such a great time working with the team as we've gone through the design phase. But what's really interesting about the colored band that runs around the top, and for those of you who've driven around campus, it is actually very vibrant in the day and also during the night, more so than even represented in the rendering, is that it actually accents the very massive trusses that span this open bay. And as we move into some of the interior renovations, really taking advantage of the space and the structure of this facility being a manufacturing campus and repurposing it as an incredible expansion or educational expansion for the College of Engineering.
Yep, absolutely. And I will say, and I apologize for not having a real photo of it, because the exterior almost looks just like this. We have finished, and actually I'll kick it over to Jason and Sean to talk a little bit about the different phases of the construction. But if it weren't for the fact that we have a bunch of construction equipment out there working on the current phase, the exterior is pretty much finished, and you guys did a really great job. If anybody's driven by or seen it, as John mentioned, it looks fantastic. I just wanted to throw a comment that Scott Steele passed along. So Scott mentioned that the east wing, Linda, that you were referring to earlier, which is over here on the far left side and comes off to the left in my picture. Also, the plastics materials group was in the late 70s in here, headed by, of course, our colleague Sala Jabarin, who was the founding director of our Polymer Institute, which is also now housed in this part of the North Engineering building. So thanks to Scott for passing that along. So Jason and Sean, can you talk a little bit about the phases of the project, how we started with the exterior and where we're going from there?
Sure. So, as Sean mentioned earlier, we decided to tackle this project as a multiple phase construction project for several reasons. One, working through the design of the exterior space and the interior space, it bought us some time to be able to work through what the elements that needed to happen inside while still making progress on the overall construction. So we looked at a three-phase project. As Scott mentioned, we've completed the exterior renovation where we put a new skin and facade on the building, as well as ensured that we had no roof leaks or any issues there. We're currently in phase 2 of the project, which is the foundation and structural work inside of the high bay space to create a second floor to the facility. So as Sean mentioned, we had a tremendous volume of space. We've created a second floor so that we could take advantage of that volume to create additional square footage inside of the existing envelope. That work is scheduled to be completed midsummer, around the end of July, mid to end of July. And we are now happy to say that we have rolled into design for phase 3 with working with Dean Toole and the college to fund the design work to get started. So Sean and his team are underway on the final design for the construction documents for the build out of the interior partitions for all the labs and classroom space, with the goal that the state capital will be released to us sometime later this summer. And our hopes are that we will be starting construction on phase 3 in the August-September timeline, with a goal of having the new facility up and ready a year later.
Fall of 2023.
There you go.
Go ahead, Sean.
No, and I was just going to say, Scott, that that's a tremendous summary. And what we're just wanted to elaborate just to touch on this rendering. One of the major goals for the master planning, because I don't think we'll get a great sense of it when we move to some of the other material, was activating this literally activating this north end and creating an opportunity for students to actively enter the north side of this facility. It's been kind of the back end of North Engineering, if you will, having to enter. And this rendering, unfortunately, just shows an intermediate completion state, and ultimately there will be a small terrace, a little bit of a loading dock. The terrace will accommodate some outdoor student gathering space. Yep. Also, right here, we have relocated the FSAE facility, and they will have direct access with their vehicles to come straight outside and down a ramp and not race through the parking lot. Sure. But really importantly, the whole College of Engineering campus is very linear north to south, and the idea that this creates the anchor. We talked a lot about it in the master planning. Is this high bay area can ultimately become the heart of the North Engineering area. But I just wanted to, before we moved on from this facility, wanted to really highlight where this facade is going as well.
Yep. And so that's the outside. Now let's talk a little bit about the inside. So Sean, here's a rendering. And I just want to mention that what you're seeing here, and I'll let Sean explain what you're kind of seeing and some of the concepts that are going on here. But it turns out this perspective that Champlin provided for us, it's pretty close to this perspective here from the old high bay. So with this in mind, Sean, tell us a little bit about what we're seeing and what Champlin's really trying to do.
So one of the things that, from the master planning standpoint, again, I mentioned it a second ago, that was very, very important to the university, was to create, a very high, a highly collaborative environment that really serves as the heart, the creating an area that could ultimately become a recruitment walk. Could also serve, the idea that the facilities that are being created are enhancing the attraction and retention of students. And this area is really a highly activated environment where we have a learning stair, to the left, a nice collaborative stair that's to the left, infilling this massive space with with the 2-story, and having an upper level terrace, if you will, that overlooks the atrium space. And the walkthrough will really show how that lower level is activated. But the overall design of the High Bay area incorporates laboratories on the first level, taking advantage of the slab on grade, because you're running lasers and all of those things. And then the second floor really becomes an area where we have general classrooms that are used not only by the college, but also by the university as a whole for general education. But just a fantastic combination of a small, medium, large, extra large, and even a sizable lecture hall that'll hold around 125 students. But the design of the space really takes advantage of, as Jason was talking about, the tremendous volume of the area. To the underside of the trusses, those trusses are about 9 feet tall, and to the underside of them is about 25 feet. So we had just enough room to sneak in truly a 2-story space. Right. And all of the modern ductwork and of course all of the classroom, the laboratory utilities and everything that will serve that lower level. But really just creating an environment that attracts, retains students is an area where faculty, staff, students, and even one of the things that's fantastic about North Engineering is pulling in pulling in industry to be part of those collaborations. And we'll see the makerspace here in a second. But that's really what this rendering really starts to highlight and capture what we feel is the energy.
And I think this rendering also answers a question we had about the use of natural lighting
Yes.
in this building.
Yes.
And you're going to see some great footage of that in a moment. So actually, while we're there, why don't I go ahead and I'm just going to pull up, and hopefully some of you have seen this video. Let me go ahead and end that and pull up the video. So let me rewind it. Yes.
There you go. We're halfway through.
Yeah, we want to show them what we're doing. So let's go ahead and pull up this video. And Sean, if you could provide a little narration as Absolutely. We're walking through, and tell us what we're seeing, and just let me know if you want me to hit pause on anything.
Great, and we will pause a little bit. So this is as you're entering from Nitschke into the low bay prior to hitting the high bay area. So immediately on the right is the makerspace. And if you want to pause for just a quick second.
Yep.
So on the right is the makerspace, and again, this is seen as an area where faculty, staff, students, and industry can get together. We've created what we call a colonnade that is connecting the low bay to the high bay. And so on the opposite side, of course, we've got some seating areas where some collaboration can take place prior to even or stepping out from the makerspace. Understanding that it gets a little noisy in there. It's a lot of things going on. But also part of the architecture and interior design is to celebrate all of the things that are going on. Is part of the design of this. It was important to the university that we not just hide all of the mechanical systems, but really try to work them in a thoughtful fashion to the point where they can become actually an educational tool. Linda, I loved the collaborations we had early on in the design process, where we would literally talk about things like structural details and using this building as an opportunity to engage students in all things engineering design.
Yep. And I should
before we hop on, we need to note that this is the Hotmer makerspace, right?
Thank you.
There we go.
Thank you, Mike and Jen. Yep.
Fantastic. But as we move on, I also wanted to mention JDRM is a local engineering company right there in Toledo. as well, who is our engineering partner on this. And interestingly enough, 50% of their staff, or almost 50% of their staff, 21 of 44 staff are UT grads. It's just tremendous. So we have folks who are working on this facility who went to school here, and it's always fun working with your alma mater.
Yep.
We can keep
And
going.
yeah, we'll keep going. I just want to point out we are walking to the north too.
That's
So
correct. Yes.
yep.
And again, we're just walking through the colonnade space, and the idea that as we start to enter the high bay area, that there's a little bit of a compression and release, and really celebrates. If you want to pause right there. Again, this was the rendering that we saw, and you're starting to see a little bit of the solar study that we did for the space, because up in the this facility is completely surrounded by glass, and we'll see some of that as we fly through in a little bit. But also taking advantage of some of the existing structure that was there. We noticed early on in design that there are actual openings that we believe were ventilation shafts at one point. And so we are taking an alternate to open those back up and turn them into skylights, and you can see them kind of dancing through north to south up overhead, and that's what's currently casting the nice, wonderful sunlight on the wall just below the North Engineering logo. But the idea here is that there are a tremendous amount of classrooms on the upper level, and then of course laboratories on the lower level. And connecting these two in a very purposeful fashion was also a major goal. Really took advantage and created a collaborative stair as well as a main circulation stair, understanding that fully occupied, there are somewhere around 800 students who can be on the upper level, and then the labs, of course, are a little less dense on the lower level, but just a lot of circulation. The stairs there that actually look into a classroom that's to the right that has some really cool glass doors that opens up, and it becomes a really, really open collaborative area. Looking just ahead, and we'll be moving here in just a second, is a teaching lab. So one of the things that was very important was to, again, put education on display, and we can probably move forward just a little bit, Scott.
Yep. I just wanted to point out, so this is a really cool rendering of what the light will look like as you proceed throughout the day. And again, that question about natural lighting. And as you're going to see it turn into evening here. So really, really beautiful. I can't wait to see that. All right, so here we are walking to the north, continuing.
Walks through, and again, just really looking into the teaching lab. So there are two labs basically in that space, and again, the idea of putting education on display was very important. Peeking over to the left, we've got a corridor that connects back to several of the actual laboratories. We have two BSL level 2 labs in this facility as well. But again, really taking advantage of opportunities to open space within space. So we're not just running through double loaded corridors, but creating comfortable collaborative areas where students, faculty, staff, industry can collaborative. We call them collaborative collisions, where they can meet and greet and have some fun. Also creating areas where group work can take place. So providing technology immediately in this within this facility, very comfortable work height, benches, et cetera, is very important. And now we're coming up on the FSAE lab. So that's the main elevator that's connecting the basement all the way up to the second floor. If you want to pause there. So at the very north end of this linear progression is the FSAE space, and really just providing fantastic large opening barn doors. So at any given time, not that they're going to drive through the building, but at least roll their vehicles out for display, conversations, et cetera. And then obviously this is connecting to that northern portion of campus. So we created new entry sequence, vestibule. There's a nice stair to the, nice open stairwell to the left that connects to the upper floor.
Yep. And so let's go ahead and go up those stairs.
Yep.
And so now we are on the second floor north end, walking south.
Correct. So that's the big, the big elevator.
Hall.
Yeah, the lecture hall's on the left, the elevator was on the left. And now we're coming back into the, into the large open environment again, just taking a look at all of the structure, the new lighting. And if you want to pause there.
Yep.
And so what we can see there is to the very right, the middle right, all of the colored glass. There's literally 1.5 stories of glass that's south facing along here. And we have some smaller classrooms in this area as well that we're creating, just some vertical glass so we can still see through and not really totally box in this facility. One of the things I think that was very important was to not just create a box within a box, but really amplify, the history of this facility and celebrate celebrate the structure. And we're still working out some of the details.
Yep.
We have 2.5 months, I think, don't we, Jason, to really anchor down the details. Some of this gets very challenging, but again, the idea that these classrooms have, at any given time, 800 students at full capacity, creating space, that students can actually, arrive and wait or spill out onto and meet both before and after class was important. And finding that balance, I think, was definitely a challenge, and not taking up too much space of the facility for it, but at the same time providing the appropriate amount, so that becomes purposeful and you're not just jammed in corridors, kind of like right now with Palmer Hall.
Yeah, I think that's important to note. There's a lot of learning that takes place outside of the classroom, and knowing the physical separation of the engineering campus from the main campus and the Carlson Library and the Student Union, creating a space for a captive audience of 4,000 to 5,000 engineering students on the campus, a place that they can gather as groups to study, to socialize, and to learn both inside and outside the classroom was important. I think we found that balance while meeting the programming needs. The other thing that I would point out, and Linda put it in the chat, is that, different than many of the clients that my group works with on campus, where we try to hide a lot of the back infrastructure stuff that's going on, it's really always rewarding working with the College of Engineering, because we want to be able to see those things, because what better to teach the students than to allow them to physically see the structure and the mechanical systems and electrical systems that are going on inside the building. So we really celebrated the opportunity that we had open ceiling plates and a lot of glass and visual so that they could actually see what was going on, because it becomes, again, learning reinforcement outside of the classroom.
Right. And there was a question about the classroom. So we are trying to reproduce as much of the capacity of the Palmer Hall classrooms, with more of an emphasis on the larger classrooms versus smaller ones. So here, just to finish it up, now we're walking from west to east along the southern edge, more classrooms, and you get a nice view of those glass windows, don't you, Sean, here?
Absolutely do. And one of the things that we did, as it opens up here, if you want to pause.
Yep.
Is there to the right again? I mentioned that's the 1.5 stories of glass. We also did something, we're calling this the bridge. It's connecting the west to the east. But we little things like celebrating the bridge and pulling the right hand side of the slab off of that exterior wall to allow some of that natural light to even filter down to the lower level, because there's a corridor down below this. And so that even those on the first floor have a little bit of visual reference as you're getting deeper into the space. But this is coming up on the again on the collaborative stair. We can probably proceed. And again, just right back to where we kind of were originally, looking into that grand open space.
And
but Scott, you mentioned the programming phase. We went in the heat of COVID. We had 8, you recall this, you were so instrumental in this. We had 8 weeks of back-to-back Friday, I think it was Friday meetings, doing nothing but programming. We were validating the Palmer, program, working closely with utilization rates and understanding, maximum capacities to ensure that we were capturing all of the program from Palmer, and ensuring that it works long-term for the university, not just a random approach to classroom planning, but very ingrained. And you and Dean Toole were so incredibly helpful with that. It was fantastic collaboration.
And I will say, if if we can't find spaces for my colleagues to hold their classes, I'm the guy they're going to be calling. So it was very important to me. Yeah. Just to finish up showing how the lighting changes here. And thank you, Sean, for providing this. This was just phenomenal. I really, really love this video. And we are almost out of time. So before I kick it back to Jennifer, I just wanted to say thanks again to Linda, Jason, Sean, and of course, Paul Hotmer. I really, really enjoyed this. Also, special thanks to Tamara Jones, who's a librarian from the Ward Candidate Center for Special Collections in Carlson Library, who helped me find a lot of the material and the photos in the old tech center. And I will tell you, if you go online and search the Carlson Library for the Candidate Center, there's a whole bunch of stuff on the Owens-Illinois company, as well as other companies in Toledo. A lot of stuff on the history of Toledo. I'd encourage you to check it out. Also, quick thanks to Diana Van Winkle for providing me some footage on the current campus. Of course, Jennifer, Jeremiah, Bethany, and Hannah from the foundation for your assistance with this. And Dean Mike Toole, who had to sit on his hands today and was probably sitting there going, oh, but I really appreciate the opportunity. I really enjoyed this. And of course, thanks to the audience. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. So with that, back to you, Jennifer.
Oh, thanks, Scott. I just have to say, I've been getting all sorts of emails and texts and comments. People are really excited about this. I mean, we've been excited about this internally for such a long time, and it's so wonderful to be able to share this now with people, and they can share in our excitement. So thanks, Scott, for coming up with this great idea for this town hall. I know, you know, it's going to spark a lot of excitement, and I'm grateful. Thank you for you know, moderating this. And thank you to Jason and Sean and Linda and Paul for participating. And of course, to each one of you in our virtual audience, as always, thank you for making time to join us today. And we hope you'll continue to join us for future town hall events. So thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone. All right. Hey, thanks again, Paul, for hopping on at last minute notice. Very, very valuable.
You're very welcome. Thank you.